Zach Hardy with the Wrestle Target, and this is my USW Bulletproof 11 or Bulletproof 2018 predictions. Um, sorry, as you can see, I'm obviously doing this early on a Wednesday before Wednesday Night Intensity and before Friday's Friday Night Severity broadcast, just so that way the predictions become a little bit more interesting, I guess you can say. Or on top of that, rather than just interesting, you can kind of say that the predictions can be a little bit more based off of the booking and what really matters in the shift that it's supposed to make. Because obviously, whoever gets the last laugh on the final shows, the go-home shows before a pay-per-view, tend to be in bad position for a win. They tend to not come out victorious on the pay-per-view because they got the last lap. That happens in a lot of different shows, so when it comes down to like a Royal Rumble or a Survivor Series, I would like to go and start predicting the shows before Raw or SmackDown. The same will apply with USW and their pay-per-views going forward. I'll do it before the Wednesday Night Intensity and Friday Night Severity broadcasts. But with that, nevertheless, as I said, I'm Zach Hardy with the Wrestle Target, and this is my Bulletproof 11 prediction video. So obviously, there's a lot to get to. There's a big pre-show that's going to be 2 hours long, aside from the regular 30-minute broadcast that USW typically has before their main card. But with their main card, they've got, I think there's 8 matches on each side of the card. And therefore, it's essentially a call to greatness, built card where it's going to be a multi-hour show. I think it's supposed to clock in, or at least the expected timing is 5 hours, but it's expected to clock in at 6 hours. So that's something. And obviously, a 2-hour pre-show makes it an 8-hour show. And unlike WWE, where shows tend to feel like they drag on, USW hasn't really had that past. They haven't had that identity. So a lot of people are going into Bulletproof this Sunday not really caring what the time is because they know USW is going to make the most of it. At the same time, though, they're kind of just expecting to have a show that is a little bit differently paced than a lot of the other regular pay-per-view broadcasts, where they set aside a lot of the things like storylines in terms of segments and promos and interviews. They just want to get from match to match to match to match. And with the timing, I expect USW to do nothing less than that. So a lot of the stories that you'll be seeing and the matches being done are all going to be happening in the ring, because I don't think there's going to be very much time outside of the ring for interviews and segments. But nevertheless, let's get into the pre-show. First and foremost, let's start out now saying that there is no confirmed set or schedule for the match card. It's not like I know which match goes on first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. All I can really tell you is what is rumored, and that is for the fact that the World Tag Team titles are expected to be in the middle of the show, and Zach Hardy is expected to close out the show. So with that, there's a little 2 pieces that we kind of know about, but the rest is just kind of done on the fly. So let's get into it. First match, Prophecy of Metric versus Philip Akron. Philip Akron, obviously in a really good position to eventually be a challenger for the USW Championship. He had that opportunity in the summer. Obviously, did not beat James, because you were not going to beat James this summer. But nevertheless, he's going up against Prophecy, who's involved with Metric, which will eventually lead into a Zach Hardy versus Philip Akron feud. I can only assume with Zach Hardy being the leader of Metric, it would make the most sense for Philip Akron's attention to then turn on to Hardy after Prophecy. So with that, and the fact that I think Philip Akron has a more distinct long-term direction than Prophecy does, and I feel like Prophecy is more like a filler for Philip Akron before he gets into the meat of a feud, of a real big feud. I'm going to assume that Philip Akron is going to win this match. Just a shame that he's on the pre-show, nevertheless. Afterwards, I will go into expecting the Wine Cellar versus MP45. So the Wine Cellar to be represented by Xavier King and Zach Arden, with Norris Godavari most likely on the outside, versus Andrew Morris and Andrew Palmer of MP45. Now this was a tougher one to predict, because I know they want to do something with MP45, but I know they want to do something with the Wine Cellar, and they haven't really booked the Wine Cellar like I would have liked them to. It's kind of been very filled with a lot of things like eating major losses, but at the same time getting a few wins on intensity or so to gain momentum going into a pay-per-view that they eventually lose in. So I'm starting to lose a little bit of hope for the current direction of the wine cellar, but nevertheless, I'm going to go with my gut and hope that USW does something, well, right with the wine cellar and actually gives them the victory at Bulletproof 11. I'm going to hope and also predict that the wine cellar, this will probably be the last time I really put faith in USW and the wine cellar. I'm going to predict that the wine cellar beat MP45. I don't necessarily think MP45 needs it, despite the fact that they've kind of, fallen. Let's just hope both teams can rebound. I don't think it's a great situation for either team. Why didn't I put the jacket on? That was a bad decision. Next matchup is Chris Sanders and Drew Akron versus the Ringmen. The Ringmen, obviously, Ty Jackson and Thomas Bennett. This is a questionable one because you can tell they want to do something with the Ringmen and the oppositionals, but at the same time, it feels like Chris Sanders and Drew Akron are kind of working their way up towards a tag team championship shot. So you've got a team that's pretty much there in contention, like next in line to the tag team titles, against a team that really wants to be there, and it's a question of whether USW goes with the current direction or their pet project. I'm going to assume the current direction, just because of the fact that it's like you got Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole facing the facing the New Northern Lights. And with the New Northern Lights and Ramsey and Cole, there can only really be 2 matches. If Ramsey and Cole win at Bulletproof, there will be 1 more after that. And then the New Northern Lights, if they win, either way, I think they only get, I think they only get 2 matches out of that feud for now, unless they don't want to overdo it, have Ramsey and Cole win the match at Bulletproof, which I'm not a big optimist on the idea of having that happen, and then the New Northern Lights do something else. I'm going to go with Chris Sanders and Drew Akron. I think it's the safest approach. I think it's the most delicate approach. I think it's the most ideal choice for USW. So Sanders and Akron are probably the safest choice. Next up is Washington versus Kevin Storm in another severity match. They want to do something with Washington. That seems to be the case with a lot of the guys on this card. They want to do something with Washington. I'm not necessarily sure that they're doing it or that they're going to go through with it long term. But if they do, I'm a big fan of that. However, Kevin Storm is in desperate need of a pay-per-view win, especially a Bulletproof. That would go a long way. He's kind of fallen off the radar a little bit since moving to severity. So I think with Kevin Storm needing the win more, Kevin Storm will most likely walk out of Bulletproof with a victory over Washington. And finally, to cap off the pre-show, it is modern-day royalty Jade Oliver, Dina Lawson, and her Equinox versus the team of Cindy Allison Jackson, Haley Osser, and Angel. This, I think, is the most obvious choice out of anything on the pre-show. It's got to be modern-day royalty. The group is just new. Jade Oliver has this kind of like moxie to her that screams, I'm going to be champion, but at the same time, you have no clue what I'm going to do in between that span of time and after that span of time. So the question now is, how far do they take this modern-day royalty thing? And since they're the only real group in the women's division, other than Aphrodite and the God Complex, which isn't really a women's division group, they're just a group. Since this is a women's division specific group and it gives all 3 women a really great thing to do, a really great project to work on, I'm going to go ahead and say that this group goes on until there's a clear definition as to whether it helps or hurts the members involved. And I think modern day royalty picks up the win here to continue momentum going downwards. Now we get into the main show. I'm going to get through all of the mid-card matches, then we'll get into the championship matches. So we start out with the Promised Land versus the Martin Brothers. Promised Land, obviously, Suzuki Kirakashi and Tanner Wallace. The Martin Brothers are Alex Martin and George Martin. This match, I'm not really buying the rumors that this is the final, collapsing piece of the Martin Brothers. I'm not really subscribing to the idea that the Martin brothers are going to turn on each other at Chaos Theory in a few weeks. I think they turn on each other at Bulletproof. I think even if the cracks start forming tonight on Intensity, I think there's got to be a definitive one breaks off the pairing with the other. The bigger prediction is not who's going to win. The bigger prediction is, especially if they do break up, which I guarantee you that the team will break up at Bulletproof. Who's going to be the one that turns on who? Alex Martin is a definite face, and I think with that, George Martin would have to be the one that turns on Alex Martin again. Like, there's no way George Martin plays the face role and Alex Martin plays the heel. It doesn't work in my mind. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Promised Land win this match, and that's what causes the Martin brothers to break up and start splitting. Next up is Alexander Rotten versus Chris Ross. It's on the severity side of the card. I think it's a very obvious answer. They're not really looking to do anything big with Chris Ross right now. And with Alexander Rotten, he needs his momentum back. I think they give the win to Alexander Rotten very definitively and push him forward towards something more. Next up is Jake Porter versus Quincy Newsome. Another match involving people that USW is kind of trying to push. The severity in their defense is trying to push a lot of people. Their roster is kind of depleted in terms of the fact that they don't really know what their identity is. They've got Eli Kaner as World Heavyweight Champion, which I believe is probably the least favorable, or when you look at him, you don't really think World Champion. And I think that's the first time you've seen that in years, maybe since Brandon Stickler. I just hope Eli Kaner does something more going forward. However, obviously there's going to be a lot of pet projects on severity, trying to right the ship, trying to do something to establish individuals as main players. You've got Paul Orlando in verse 9 in a great position for that, as well as Eli Kaner. This is a pet project that they have a stake in both. There's Jake Porter and Quincy Newsome, both individuals looking to get a push. Jake Porter's on this kind of win streak. He hasn't been losing, hasn't been pinned or submitted, hasn't gone outright and used that as a part of his character, but we have taken note of that, and the commentators have pieced together that point. And Quincy Newsome got to team with Morbid, essentially taking down Hell on Earth, and then now is going back into singles competition. So Quincy Newsome and Jake Porter both kind of trying to rise up in the ranks. I don't know exactly who you give this win to. Probably the most confusing and the most statistical perspective kind of match you would have to define your answer by. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Jake Porter is going to win this match. Just with the fact that the commentators have been building up this fact that he hasn't been beaten cleanly for a while, I'm going to go ahead and say that Jake Porter wins this match against Quincy Newsome. Next up is Derek Carter versus Simon Saint on the intensity side of the ball. I'm not really sure exactly who you kind of give the favor to in this match. Neither man is really being given any definitive direction. I think both men are just kind of coasting along on their status. They haven't done anything with Simon Saint since he's come back, and I'm pissed off about that. And Derek Carter, at least, we're kind of seeing a split between, does he turn face, or does he remain face, or does he turn heel? He has been used absolutely 0% of the way through this year. I mean, aside from his match with his matches with Mr. Anthony, he hasn't done a damn thing. I mean, and obviously the Call of Greatness spot where he got chucked off the ladder from the middle of the ring and thrown through the commentary table. He hasn't really done anything of note this year, and I think they've got to invest in him. I think they really have to start investing in him. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Derek Carter beats Simon Saint, starts pushing his way forward, starting at Bulletproof. Next match is Tyree Carver versus Mr. Anthony. This is a battle between two guys very much involved in the Blue Belt Championship picture. Carver obviously kind of going less and less and less and less towards a logical mindset and towards a motivated mindset to beat Dwayne Porter and take the title off of him, and is now kind of becoming a little bit more obsessed with it. And with that, you see Mr. Anthony trying to pounce on Tyree Carver's vulnerability and his weakness, also to kind of make sure that he has an easier route to the Blue Belt Championship, which has been the major storyline for him since Call of Greatness. He won the Red Belt Championship, eventually lost that title, and is now making his way and his move up through the ranks. And that continues with the Blue Belt Championship, which he's trying to take off the hands of Dwayne Porter. As Tyree Carver is trying to stop him from doing so, because Tyree Carver wants to be the one to take the title off of Dwayne Porter's hands. It's a messy, messy situation for both characters. My apologies. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Mr. Anthony's going to win this match. I just think it makes sense for Tyree Carver, who's got a direction where he's becoming less and less and less logical. He's becoming more obsessed with taking the title off of Dwayne Porter. He's becoming more hot-headed. Even if it's a slow burn towards that hot-headedness, taking full steam ahead, I think it's still that turn that you can very well notice and kind of define. So I'm going to go ahead and say Mr. Anthony wins this match. I think it's to the benefit of both guys. Lone Wolf versus Capital on severity, a battle between both guys that I think are very obvious candidates to get released by the time next year comes around, just because they've done nothing over the past year, and it doesn't look like they're going to be doing anything over the next year or so because of what USW has kind of put them in with booking and such. Not to mention that there are going to be a couple of developmental call-ups towards the main intensity and severity rosters to kind of help lighten the roster. They're going to end up having to make some cuts, and I think Lone Wolf and Capital will probably be those guys that they end up cutting. This is a match that I don't think means much, just a way to get them both on the card. I give it to Capital, because why the hell not? Weiler versus Benny Franklin on the intensity side of the card. Weiler, obviously, he's like a no-nonsense kind of guy right now. He's angry, he's scorned, he's pissed off, he wants to take opportunities. And Benny Franklin's a great first opponent to beat, to make yourself known, and give yourself an opportunity to go forward onto a championship picture or a higher mid-card run. I give the win to Weiler right now. I think that USW has something in mind for him, even if it's only for a month or two. I think they give him the win at Bulletproof because that would make the most sense. And then obviously to close out the mid-card non-title matches, you have Ashley Donovan versus Margot Silva and Natalie Dawson in a 2-on-1 handicap match. If Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva lose here, they look extremely weak. Aphrodite would have beaten them once, twice, a third time, even when they had all the chips on the deck. And if they lose with a 2-to-1 advantage, that just makes them look laughable. So I think USW knows that. I think they realize that, and I think they're going to give Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva the victory here. USW Tag Team Championship match. You've got the Stargazers, champions obviously defending the titles in the match, representing Metric, versus the Marvelous Brothers in Arms, MBIA, Fernandez, and Gringo. This match is a very obvious one to call. Stargazers just recently won the USW Tag Team Championships. I don't think they're going to lose the titles very easily. I think they're going to have a lengthy run with them. It makes the most sense. They've been booked strongly over the past couple of months. Stargazers hands down. I don't think there's any other choice right there. World Tag Team Championship match. You've got Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole defending the championships against the New Northern Lights. I was trying to convince myself that Ramsey and Cole would win this match, and then the New Northern Lights would fall out of the picture. They'd try to climb back up the USW or the World Tag Team title ranks, while Sanders and Akron, fought Ramsey and Cole, and maybe Artemis and Ophion also faced Ramsey and Cole. I don't know, something along those lines. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, though. I try to convince myself. I can't really convince myself. It makes the most sense. They're hot. They're lively. They're over. People love them. The underdog story. The redemption story. They got their revenge against Suzuki Hirakashi and Tanner Wallace. They broke free from this cult-like system within the Promised Land. They're now the New Northern Lights. That's even emphasized in their name. It makes the most sense. I think the New Northern Lights beat Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole at Bulletproof 11 to become the new World Tag Team Champions. Red Belt Championship match, you've got Chain Reaction representing Metric and defending the Red Belt Championship against Crosby Thorne. This match is not as one-sided as you may think, at least not in my mind. Chain Reaction beat Crosby Thorne, even though Crosby Thorne was debuting on a pay-per-view in a big moment. It was something that USW meant to feel special, and it did feel special. But Chain Reaction still beat Crosby Thorne, still retained the Red Belt Championship. A lot of people are expecting him to do the same thing at Bulletproof 11. I don't see that happening. I don't see them bringing in Crosby Thorne for a loss. and then having him lose again. You know, that doesn't make sense. They wouldn't bring in a guy like Crosby Thorne into the picture without having him win something big, or without having him in a big moment. And if he's going to lose to Chain Reaction a couple of weeks ago, then I don't really... Plain and simple, I don't really see Crosby Thorne beating Chain Reaction. I'm sorry, I don't see Chain Reaction beating Crosby Thorne again at Bulletproof. It also makes the most sense, despite the fact that I love Chain Reaction as Red Belt Champion. He's done a great job with it. He's got a great role in metric because of it. I'm going to give the win to Crosby Thorne. I think it makes the most sense to put the title on Crosby Thorne, and at the same time, it explains a lot for why they brought him back. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother trying to convince myself. Crosby Thorne to win. Global Championship match is up next. Otis Crane defends the championship against Octavian. I'm not too sure, despite the fact that I know Otis Crane is fantastic. He's a gold mine filled with untapped potential that no other company was able to see before USW. The crowd sees it. The crowd is getting behind him. He's getting over and over and over, more and more and more as the weeks go on. But I'm not sure that USW is fully invested in him. Otis Crane, after all, is still involved with the Mobocracy, which involves Capital and Chris Ross, two guys that respectively are bound to be released and are not going to be pushed within the next while. Chris Sanders and Drew Akron are the exception because they are such a notable tag team in a roster filled with challengers. It makes the most sense to keep them as a viable challenger to ensure that the tag titles feel like they can change hands at any fucking moment. And then you've also got Mika Jordan, who's off doing his own thing with Austin Atomic, which he's not involved in the Mobocracy, but Mika Jordan is, and Mika Jordan's over, and Austin Atomic is over, and they're getting over now as a tag team. I'm not sure because the USW is not, really head over heels, leaping over the moon, on the side of the Mobocracy. I don't think they see him as a big, valuable piece to their programming. And with Otis Crane being involved with them, despite the fact that he's like an outlier, he's really the standout guy. He's had a great year so far. I don't necessarily think USW is really invested in him as much as we want them to be. But I know who they are invested in, and that is Octavian. That is the God Complex. They had Octavian face Alexander Rotten, a world champion. Even in a losing effort, they made him feel like he could win the World Heavyweight Championship, like he could win the big one. They had him compete for the Global Championship now at Bulletproof, and I think when it comes down to it, they're invested in him. I think they're going full head over heels for Octavian and the God Complex. The God Complex has been the standalone, top-notch, most talked about thing on USW this year. It's really one of the only things that Severity has had stable throughout the entire year that has been fantastic from start to finish, from January 1st to December 31st. And I think Octavian beats Otis Crane to win the Global Championship at Bulletproof 11. Not to mention the God Complex, aside from Aphrodite with the World's Women's Championship, which I, spoiler alert, don't think we'll be seeing too much more of on Aphrodite's shoulder after the night. Aside from that, Octavian hasn't had any championship success, neither has Artemis and Ophion. They're all trying to gain their identities. Aphrodite is like the leader, Octavian's like the enforcer, and Artemis and Ophion are like the guys that keep, they're the engine, the motor, they keep the stable going. And because of that, I see Octavian winning Global Championship at Bulletproof 11. USW Women's Championship is also on the line. Alicia Sinclair defends the title against Peyton Hawthorne. And it's an easy decision. Alicia Sinclair is going to beat Peyton Hawthorne. She beat Peyton Hawthorne a couple of weeks back. Despite the fact that the title was not on the line, they made Peyton Hawthorne feel like an afterthought. I think all the credibility that Peyton Hawthorne had went out the window, and this match is more to reestablish that than it is to give her a fighting chance to become the new champion. Alicia Sinclair to easily beat Peyton Hawthorne to retain the title. However, when it comes down to the World's Women's Championship, that is absolutely a different fucking story. Aphrodite of the God Complex defends the title against Taylor Hell, and holy fucking shit, there's a billion ways that this match could play out. I'm going to go through two of them. Aphrodite wins or Taylor Hell wins. I think the latter will happen. It makes sense that Aphrodite would win the match. I think they want to continue to enforce the fact that these women's championships mean something. They are established. They want to keep them established, and they want to ensure that both Alicia Sinclair and Aphrodite really take the titles to the moon in terms of what they're worth. I think Alicia Sinclair is absolutely doing that, but I think Aphrodite has done that better. I think Aphrodite has done that more. And I think Aphrodite is far enough in her reign where the World's Women's Championship means enough where we can look at the title and go, this is going to be a good match. And I think if there's anybody that can beat her and have it feel special and have it mean something, it would probably be Taylor Hell. I think USW is really behind Taylor Hell. There's a good reason to be. She's like Becky Lynch if Becky Lynch had absolutely no filter. She'll kick you in the face, she'll bust you open, she'll take the blood, smear it on her chest, and then smear it on your title. She's like a goddamn predator. She'll kill you if it means she'll win the championship. And that is what I want to see out of the World's Women's Champion. And I think that if anybody had not only just a great chance at beating Aphrodite and taking the title off of her, but actually had a chance to make it feel legitimate, like she could actually kick Aphrodite's ass, I think Taylor Hell would be that person we'd go, yeah, she could absolutely kick Aphrodite's ass. I'm going to go ahead and say Taylor Hell is my prediction to win the World's, or is my prediction to beat Aphrodite and become the new World's Women's Champion at Bulletproof 11. We get into the Blue Belt Championship match, Dwayne Porter versus Dustin Raymond in a battle of 2013's Blue Belt Championship picture. I think Dwayne Porter wins this match. I don't think Dustin Raymond has much of a service towards the Blue Belt Championship at this stage of the game. And with Dwayne Porter, there's still the storyline of Mr. Anthony wants to take the title off of him. Tyree Carver is becoming obsessed with taking the title off of him. All the Blue Belt Championship, storyline has to do with Dwayne Porter. It all comes back to the Blue Belt title and Dwayne Porter. And I think that's how it remains after Bulletproof. I think Dwayne Porter beats Dustin Raymond, retains the Blue Belt title. The International Championship, on the other hand, Verse 9 defends against Paul Orlando. We saw the same thing happen, just in a different fashion with Chain Reaction and Crosby Thorne a couple of weeks back at USW's, whatever the fuck it was called. I think it was Allegiance. And when it comes down to it, I think that at the end of the day, Paul Orlando dropped the Global Championship to Otis Crane to ensure that we could see Paul Orlando move on up in the position that we know he's damn well capable of. Severity has done fantastic in building up this dude. They've done fantastic at making him feel special, making him feel worth something. And I think this caps off with the International Championship victory at Bulletproof 11, beating out Verse 9, who I think will move up to the World Championship picture and probably get involved with the Crimson Red Eli Kaner storyline, which I'll get to in a minute. But overall, I think this is Paul Orlando's moment. I think this is Paul Orlando's night. I think Paul Orlando beats Verse 9 to become the new international champion. World Heavyweight Championship match. Now we're getting into the two main events. Eli Kaner defends against Crimson Red, and god damn it, I know Eli Kaner's going to win this match. He's my prediction to retain the World Heavyweight Championship, just primarily for the fact that he only won it a couple of months ago. Even though there's still the fact that I don't look at Eli Kaner and think World Heavyweight Champion. This may be the first time in years that I've looked at somebody that held the World Heavyweight Championship and I can go, yeah, this is not going to end well. I don't like this. Bad decision. They shouldn't have put the title on him. This is only going to end horribly. This is another Brandon Stickler situation. I mean, any other company, you can kind of go, not too sure about this decision. Jinder Mahal as WWE champion was one thing. Bray Wyatt, because of the fact that you knew they weren't invested in him. Randy Orton after him. John Cena, when you knew that it was only to tie the record. And at the same time, then you had Brock Lesnar, you had Goldberg, you had Roman Reigns, and then you knew that title wasn't going off of him unless something happened, which obviously it did, but it was like you knew that nobody was going to lose, or you knew nobody was going to benefit from that. I see that with WWE all the time. There are times where I see that with Impact Wrestling. I saw that with Austin Aries when he dropped the title and picked it up like a few weeks later. And I don't see that almost ever with USW. That's why, when you hear the world title and USW title, and you think of people that shouldn't have held the title, you think of Brandon Stickler and Double XL respectively. I don't know. I don't see Eli Kaner as a valuable World Heavyweight Champion. He's still technically in his infancy of his reign, but there's going to have to be something to start up there. He still looks like he has no clue what the fuck he wants to do, and that's not something I want to see out of the world champion, especially the fact that he should be having his fucking eyes glued purely and fucking specifically on retaining that title, despite the fact that he looks like he wants to beat people up, but he looks like he wants to start fights, but it also looks like he wants to hide back and let people fight for him. I don't know what he wants to do, and the world champion, that's the one thing a world champion shouldn't be, which is fucking curious about what the fuck he's meant to be doing. But because of the fact that I hope this feud would have been better, but it hasn't really done anything for me. Crimson Red, I thought, could have brought out the best in Eli Kaner, who, God, it's just a disaster. This is going to be, I don't think it's going to end well for Eli Kaner. And honestly, I think that if Crimson Red doesn't win at Bulletproof, Eli Kaner could absolutely drop the title at Aftershock, or he could drop the title at Insanity. He may drop the title soon, because I think USW is starting to realize this may have been the bad idea to pull the trigger on Eli Kaner at that stage when they did. And I think the fans are very much behind that idea as well. I think Eli Kaner, though, wins at Bulletproof, and we see where he goes from there, because I think Versanine then obviously losing the international title allows Eli Kaner to face Crimson Red one more time, probably at Aftershock for the title, and then Versanine versus Eli Kaner will happen at Insanity, and Versanine will probably become the new World Heavyweight Champion at that point in time. So Eli Kaner to win this match just makes the most sense. Then we get into the main event, the USW Championship match. Obviously, probably the most anticipated match on the card, despite the fact that the match has happened a number of times before. It's just, it has a new element to it. James defends the USW Championship against Zach Hardy with Metric in his corner. This is a big storyline. I mean, these guys have fought multiple times this year, especially for the USW Championship. You look back at the past 3 matches that they've had, and the ratings were all 5-star, 5-star, and despite the fact that the third match had been like the 5th installment under the same thing, there was no anticipation to it, still reached 4.75 stars on a number of different reviewers because of the fact that it was just a really good match. These guys always have fantastic matches. I'm obviously going to refer to myself in the third person, but these guys always have fantastic matches. There's not much, if anything, that can stop them from anything that they do. When they step into the ring with each other, you can guarantee it's going to be a really good match. They appreciate the classic technical wrestling. They appreciate the storytelling. There's the in-ring psychology work that the two of them have. It's just brilliant storytelling. Even if it's just as simple as working a limb or not being able to set up a maneuver because your limb was worked for so long. It's the simple things like that that you see in all pro wrestling, but they just do it so well. And they do it because they have chemistry with each other and it works for them. And with that, then we add in the whole new element of the story as well, which you hadn't really had in months prior because, it was James was the good guy that, was the defending champion. Zach Hardy was the good guy that was trying to take the title back. And that was the same storyline since he lost the title to James in February. Now Zach Hardy turned on James. Big shocker at the end of Allegiance where he sided with Metric, this vigilante group, turned heel for the first time. It was the first time that, excluding the Enigma run because it was under the Enigma name, the first time Zach Hardy turned heel since 2009. It was a big deal. And with that came a whole new aspect and circumstance to his character. So you get to throw it in the air of what do you choose? Zach Hardy's probably more over now than he's been in years. And James is still over. But with me, I think that the prediction, and I have no clue who's going to win, my prediction would be Zach Hardy. He's extremely over. The story favors him. It would make sense for Metric to just wipe out James and clean house, even if the match is only 10 minutes long, 5 minutes long. It just ends with a beatdown and Zach Hardy takes advantage and just swiftly pins James and takes the title. That makes sense. It would make him look like a smarmy, vindictive, and think 3 steps ahead of your opponent, but at the same time, don't do it where you can say, oh, yeah, I won cleanly. Ensure that it's a dirty win. It's a dirty win, and keep it to be a dirty win. But, oh, sorry, I thought something was across my shirt. But nevertheless, do it only for the sole purpose of winning the title. And at the same time, I think USW is realizing that James has held the title since February. They're going to have to drop the title off of him eventually. And I think it's going to be a case where you have to start fearing that James has held the title for so long that you're going to have to take it off of him very soon. And I think Bulletproof is the option to do it because despite the fact that he's really over with the fans still, you don't want to get it to a point where the fans start going, all right, you know, he should have lost the title there. I can let that slide, but there are also 2 other occasions he should have lost the title. Why? You know, he shouldn't be just, he should have lost the title by now. You know, there's no reason for him to still be the champion. You know, and that makes sense. Also, James just now recently became, or passed Zach Hardy's record of 297 days as USW champion to become the longest reigning USW champion of all time. So one has to imagine that sooner or later, probably sooner, the former obviously, people are going to start turning on James. They're going to want to see a championship change. They're going to want to see something shift. They don't want to see the same old, same old. And now James is involved in a feud with a guy who's the top heel on Intensity now, just by proxy. You know, he's the face. He was the former face of the company. He didn't like the direction he was turning, or that everything was turning into. Sided with a vigilante group. Is now the leader of essentially this assailant kind of formation, or what do you fucking call it? Stable. He's automatically the top heel, and James being the world champion, the USW champion, is the top face. So now you can't turn James heel. This is the best opportunity I think USW has of taking the title off of James, with it having logic behind it, before the fans turn on James. And I think this is the perfect opportunity. Zach Hardy is over. James, you don't want his value to lessen and to go downhill. You want him to remain a guy that people love and want to see remain USW champion as long as possible. And that'll happen if he loses the title to Zach Hardy at Bulletproof. Zach Hardy becomes more over. Metric has a more stable way of kind of saying, I want to do this, and this is what's going to happen. And James can continue to fight back up for the title, and people can continue to want to see him succeed without getting too bored of him. So Zach Hardy win in the main event. And with that being said, those are my predictions for USW Bulletproof 11. Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? What are your predictions? Leave them in the comments down below. I will get to every single one of you as fast as I possibly can. And with that being said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You can find me on Instagram at TheZackhardy. You can find me on Twitter at ZACHARYSERRA, and you can find my Twitter 2020 presidential run account, or at the same time my political account, at VOTE, the number 4, HARDY. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, subscribe for more. I am Zach Hardy, and I am signing off, of course.